The CSS positioning properties determine the reference point for the positioning of the element box. This allows you to place elements with more precision and accuracy. These properties can also be used to place an element behind another, or to specify what should happen when an element's content is too big. For example, if I fill out this div tag with more content than can fit in the dimensions of the box. Elements are positioned using the top, bottom, left, and right properties. Right here I've set my left and top properties for this page content area here, this container 2. Actually, I think it's this one right here to the right. However, these properties will not work unless the position property is set first. And I've done that here. I've set my position to absolute for container 2. For container 1, looks like I have position absolute with height, left setting, and top setting down here below. Also, these positioning values will work differently depending on the positioning method used. As you're probably gathering from this section, positioning elements with CSS is powerful but can be very tricky. So let me proceed carefully to cover this material using a lot of visual examples in support of my descriptions. As I mentioned, the positioning values work differently depending on the positioning method. There are 4 methods: static, fixed, absolute, and relative. So let me run through each of these 4, starting with static positioning. Static positioning is the default position for all elements. You define it by choosing position : static, like so. This means that the element is not positioned and occurs where it would normally occur in the document. Statically positioned elements are always positioned according to the normal flow of the page. Normally you wouldn't specify this unless you needed to override a positioning that had been previously set. Static positioned elements are not affected by the top, bottom, left, and right properties. Here I have an element with a fixed position. Elements with fixed positions are positioned relative to the browser window. Once fixed in position, elements will never move even if the browser window is scrolled. For example, here if we look at this in Firefox, I have 2 divisions, one with an absolute position, one with a fixed position. Notice that as I scroll the page, the content with a fixed position never moves. Now, fixed position elements are completely removed from the normal flow of a web page. The document and other elements behave like the fixed position element doesn't even exist, and fixed positioned elements can overlap other elements, as demonstrated here. This technique has a variety of uses. For example, you can use this for universal navigation, maybe at the top of the browser, or for forms that need to always appear at the top of the browser. Use this with caution, however, as many older browsers don't support fixed positioning, including Netscape 4.7 and older. Internet Explorer supports the fixed position value only if a doc type is specified. We now come to absolute positioning. When an element is positioned absolutely, it's removed from the normal document flow and placed exactly where you tell it to go. The document and other elements behave like the absolutely positioned element doesn't exist. An absolutely positioned element is positioned relative to the first parent element that has a position other than static. If no such element is found, the containing block will be HTML. In other words, everything will be positioned relative to the upper left-hand corner of the web browser. Absolutely positioned elements can overlap other elements. I have 2 examples here with div tags that, notice, are absolutely positioned with a position 30 pixels from the left and 20 pixels from the top. That's this first div element. The other div element, container 2, notice is positioned 493 pixels absolutely from the left edge and 21 pixels from the top. Now, one advantage to using absolute positioning is that we can position the elements in any order on the stage regardless of the order they appear in the HTML. In other words, I can place a div element first on the page, but it can be coded last in the document. More on absolute positioning later. Now let's move on to relative positioning.